The massive alien ship appeared over New York without warning, its smooth silver surface reflecting the morning sun. Unlike the panic such arrivals usually caused in movies, the people of Earth had grown used to alien visitors over the past 5 years. Most just glanced up, took a quick photo for their social media, and went about their day. Inside the United Nations building, things were a bit more interesting. Jack Stone stood at attention, trying not to fidget as the tall, blue-skinned alien ambassador read from a glowing tablet. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of translation devices. To be clear, Ambassador Rick said, his large eyes blinking slowly, "Your planet wishes to send a representative to the Galactic Academy of Survival Arts." Every word dripped with disbelief. General Roberts, Earth's military liaison to the galactic community, nodded. "That's correct. We believe it would help strengthen ties between Earth and the Galactic Union." Rick's antenna twitched, a sign of discomfort that humans had learned to recognize. "You understand this is not a simple training exercise. The Academy tests beings in the most extreme conditions the galaxy has to offer. Many participants don't complete the course." Jack fought back a smile. He'd read the course description, and honestly, it sounded a lot like his regular camping trips back in Colorado. "We understand the risks," General Roberts assured. "Captain Stone here has volunteered as our representative." The alien ambassador turned his attention to Jack, studying him with those large purple eyes. "Captain Stone, your medical scans show you're completely unmodified. No genetic enhancements, no cybernetic improvements, not even basic atmospheric adaptation implants. How do you expect to survive?" "Well, sir," Jack replied, keeping his voice respectful, "I figured I'd just do my best." A sound like wind chimes filled the room, the alien equivalent of laughter. "Your best? Perhaps I should be more specific. The first challenge alone involves surviving pressure changes that would crush most unprotected beings." "Like deep-sea diving?" Jack asked. "Or mountain climbing?" "Because I've done both." The ambassador's laughter stopped. He looked down at his tablet, then back at Jack. "You've willingly exposed yourself to such conditions. For entertainment?" "Sure. Lots of humans do. It's good exercise." Rix turned to his assistant, a shorter alien with green scales, and they spoke in quick, hushed tones. Jack caught words like Deathworld, and naturally adapted in their conversation. Finally, the ambassador turned back to the humans. "The Academy Board will need to discuss this. Normally, we don't accept species from worlds like yours. The liability concerns alone." "Ambassador," General Roberts interrupted politely, "Article 7 of the Galactic Union Charter specifically prohibits discrimination based on planetary origin. Either Earth qualifies for Academy admission, or we don't. Our evolutionary history shouldn't be a factor." Jack watched the ambassador's antenna droop, a sign of resignation. He'd seen that look before, usually when aliens realized they couldn't argue with their own rules. "Very well," Rix said finally. "Captain Stone, you will be Earth's first participant in the Academy's history. The transport will arrive in 7 standard days." He paused, then added almost kindly, "I suggest you get your affairs in order. Many consider these trials unsurvivable." After the aliens left, General Roberts turned to Jack with a worried look. "You sure about this, Stone? We can find someone else." Jack shrugged, already thinking about what to pack. "Honestly, sir, from what they described, it sounds easier than my last survival training course. At least this place will have actual safety protocols." As he walked out of the UN building, Jack couldn't help but wonder what all the fuss was about. Sure, aliens found Earth's conditions harsh, but that was their problem. He'd grown up hiking 14,000-foot peaks, swimming in ice-cold mountain lakes, and camping in everything from desert heat to winter blizzards. If this was the galaxy's idea of an ultimate survival course, he had a feeling they were in for a surprise. Little did Jack know, he was about to turn the entire Galactic Academy's understanding of survival completely upside down. The Galactic Academy of Survival Arts looked like something out of a dream. The massive structure floated in space, its crystalline towers stretching out in every direction. Jack pressed his face against the transport ship's window, watching as artificial gravity generators kept the whole thing perfectly stable. "Please remain seated, human stone," chirped his guide, a bird-like alien named Pip. "Your species is known to have poor balance in zero gravity." Jack didn't bother correcting him. He'd spent 3 years training astronauts at NASA, but sometimes it was better to let aliens keep their assumptions. The ship docked with a gentle bump, and Jack grabbed his simple backpack, the only luggage he brought. Around him, other students struggled with massive containers of survival gear and environmental suits. He counted at least 50 different species, none of them human. "This way to orientation," Pip announced, leading them through gleaming corridors. "Please maintain appropriate atmospheric bubbles if your species requires them." Jack noticed he was the only one walking around without any protective gear. A tall crystalline being beside him shuffled away nervously, its environmental suit humming with power. The orientation room was massive, with seats designed to accommodate everything from floating gas creatures to massive rock-like aliens. Jack found a simple chair and sat down, aware of the empty spaces other students left around him. "Is this seat taken?" a voice asked. Jack looked up to see a humanoid figure in a sleek environmental suit. Through the clear faceplate, he could see silver skin and bright green eyes. "All yours," Jack replied with a friendly smile. "I'm Trix from Lumina," she said, settling carefully into the seat. "You're the human everyone's talking about." "That's me, Jack Stone from Earth. Is it true that your planet has areas where frozen water falls from the sky?" "You mean snow?" "Sure, happens all the time." Trix's eyes widened. "And you survive this?" Before Jack could explain that snow was actually pretty fun, the Academy's head instructor floated onto the stage. The alien looked like a cross between an octopus and a cloud, its tentacles glowing with bioluminescent patterns. "Welcome, students," the instructor's voice resonated in their minds. "I am Grand Instructor Xel. You represent the finest survival specialists from your respective worlds. Over the next 3 cycles, you will face challenges that push the very limits of survival." Holoprojections appeared around the room, showing various training environments. Jack recognized things that looked like basic weather conditions on Earth. Rain, heat, cold, nothing too exciting. "First warning," Cell continued, tentacles pulsing with serious red light. "These challenges are extremely dangerous. We have lost students in the past. If anyone wishes to withdraw, now is the time." Several students immediately stood up and left. Jack fought back a yawn. He'd had tougher safety briefings for weekend camping trips. "Second warning." Cell's voice grew even more serious. "You will face pressure variations, temperature extremes, and gravity fluctuations. Your environmental suits." Cell paused, noticing Jack's casual attire. "Human Stone, where is your survival gear?" All eyes turned to Jack. He straightened in his chair, just wearing it. "Sir, standard Earth clothing. Cotton shirt, wool socks, leather boots." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Cell's tentacles turned a confused yellow color. "You intend to face our challenges in fabric coverings?" "Yes, sir. They're pretty comfortable. The boots are waterproof too." Trix leaned over and whispered, "Are all humans this brave, or insane?" Jack whispered back, "Honestly, this place feels like a nice resort compared to Earth. We've got this thing called winter that's way worse than anything I've seen in the course description." The orientation continued, but Jack noticed the instructors kept shooting concerned glances his way. He really didn't understand what the big deal was. Sure, some of the challenges sounded interesting, but nothing worse than a tough week in the Rockies. As they filed out of orientation, Jack overheard one instructor muttering to another, "Maybe we should have researched Earth conditions more thoroughly before accepting their application." Jack smiled to himself. This was going to be an interesting few weeks. Today's challenge will test your ability to handle extreme pressure variations, Grand Instructor Excel announced, their tentacles glowing with a serious blue light. You will experience conditions ranging from 0.7 to 1.5 standard atmospheres. Jack stood with the other students in front of a massive chamber. Through its clear walls, he could see what looked like a simple obstacle course. Some students were already double-checking their environmental suits. Trix fidgeted with her suit's pressure gauges. They say this simulates conditions from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. How will you manage without protection? Jack shrugged. Sounds like a normal day back home. Ever heard of Mount Everest? Or the Dead Sea? Dead Sea. Several nearby aliens shifted nervously at the name. Yeah, it's this great vacation spot. The water's so dense you float right on top. Great for your skin, too. The first group entered the chamber. Jack watched as they struggled with the increasing pressure, their movements becoming sluggish. 2 crystalline beings had to be evacuated when their suits started cracking. Human stone. Cell called. Your turn. Last chance to requisition proper safety equipment. I'm good, Jack said, walking into the chamber. Trix and 3 other students followed, all encased in their protective gear. The first section started with high pressure. Jack felt the familiar sensation of his ears popping, like when an airplane descended. He'd gone to equalize the pressure and kept moving. Behind him, he heard the whir of suit motors as the others fought against the increased atmospheric weight. Human stone, the instructor's voice came through the speakers. Your vital signs are stable. How are you feeling? Fine, Jack called back, climbing over an obstacle. Reminds me of this great diving spot in the Caribbean. Though the water pressure there was way stronger than this. He heard something that sounded like worried muttering from the control room. The course shifted to low pressure. 2 more students had to exit when their suits couldn't adjust fast enough. Jack just controlled his breathing, like he'd learned during high-altitude training. Hey Trix, he called to his struggling friend. Want to know something cool? On Earth, we have cities where people live permanently at pressures lower than this. Kids play outside, old folks go shopping. Totally normal. Trix stumbled. Your species builds cities in lethal conditions. For fun. Well, the view is pretty nice up in the mountains. Jack completed the course first, hardly breaking a sweat. He waited at the exit as Trix finally made it through, her suit's warning lights flashing from the strain. Back in the observation room, the instructors huddled around their monitors, checking and rechecking the readings. Impossible, one muttered. His body adapted to the pressure changes automatically. No technological assistance at all. And he's not even showing signs of stress, another added. Look at his heart rate. It barely changed. Jack stood nearby, drinking from his water bottle and watching the remaining students struggle through the course. He felt a little bad about how easy it had been. Maybe he should have at least pretended it was difficult. Zell floated over, their tentacles now a confused mixture of colors. Human stone, we must ask, how did your species develop such adaptability? Well, Jack thought for a moment. Earth's got lots of different environments. High places, low places, wet places, dry places. I guess we just got used to it over time. Plus, humans like exploring, so we're always finding new places to adapt to. The instructor's tentacles turned a pale shade of worry. And this is normal for humans. Pretty much. Though I know some people who are way better at this stuff than me. My friend Bill runs ultramarathons at high altitude. That's really impressive. Jack noticed the room had gone very quiet. Even the students who'd failed the challenge were staring at him. What's an ultramarathon? Trix asked nervously. Jack grinned. Oh, you're going to love this story. The remaining students gathered in front of 2 massive chambers. One glowed with heat, while frost covered the windows of the other. After yesterday's pressure test, the class had shrunk by 1/3. Today's challenge is temperature adaptation. Cell announced, their tentacles a cautionary orange. You must survive both extreme heat and cold. Chamber temperatures will range from -10 to 45 degrees Celsius. Jack pulled a light jacket from his backpack, while other students rushed to activate their thermal regulation systems. Human stone. Cell called out, our sensors indicate you're still using only basic fabric protection. Are you certain? Oh yeah, Jack interrupted, zipping up his jacket. Though I might take it off in the hot room. Gets pretty stuffy in there. Trix, now Jack's regular challenge partner, adjusted her suit's temperature controls. Your species can survive such extremes without technological aid. Survive? We have sports competitions in worse conditions. Jack grinned. Ever heard of ice hockey or beach volleyball? The cold chamber came first. Jack walked in alongside 5 other students, their suits humming with heating elements. Frost immediately began forming on the metal obstacles they needed to climb. Careful, Jack said, watching a crystalline being slip on the ice. It's actually pretty nice in here. Reminds me of skiing weather. Skiing? Asked one of the instructors through the speaker. Yeah, it's where you strap smooth boards to your feet and slide down frozen mountains. Great fun, though this is more like fall weather. We usually ski in much colder conditions. The monitoring room erupted in confused chatter. Jack completed the cold challenge easily, even stopping to help a fellow student whose suit had started to freeze up. You just need to keep moving, he explained. Generates body heat naturally. The heat chamber proved even more interesting. Jack removed his jacket, now just in his t-shirt and pants. The other students' cooling systems were at maximum power. Temperature now at 45 Celsius, the computer announced. Ah, Jack said, wiping some sweat from his forehead. Like a nice summer day in Arizona. Though not as dry, you've added some humidity, right? Cell's tentacles turned a confused purple. You can detect atmospheric moisture levels without instruments. Sure, your hair gets kind of frizzy in humidity. Plus, it feels different when you breathe. 2 more students had to exit when their cooling systems overloaded. Jack just kept moving, occasionally taking sips from his water bottle. Human stone. Cell called out, your core temperature is elevating. Should we extract you? Nah, this is normal. Humans cool down by sweating. It's like natural air conditioning. Pretty efficient once you get used to it. Back in the observation room after completing both challenges, Jack found himself surrounded by curious instructors and students. You mean to tell us, one instructor asked, checking data readings, that humans regularly inhabit environments with greater temperature variations than our test chambers? Well, yeah. Earth's got deserts that go above 50 Celsius during the day and below freezing at night. People live there, build cities and everything. And the frozen sports you mentioned? Trix asked, still shivering despite her suit's best efforts. Oh man, wait until you hear about ice fishing. People cut holes in frozen lakes and sit there for hours catching fish. Some even build little houses on the ice. The room fell silent again. Jack was getting used to that reaction. Your species, Cell said slowly, their tentacles now a shade of deep thought, builds temporary dwellings on frozen water for recreation. Sure do. Though personally, I prefer winter camping. Nothing beats sleeping under the stars in fresh snow. One of the monitoring devices made a strange sound as its operator fainted. Jack looked around at the shocked faces and stunned silence. You know, he said cheerfully, I'm starting to think Earth might be a bit different from other planets. Trix just shook her head. Human Jack, I believe that may be the understatement of the galactic cycle. Today's test will push your adaptation abilities to their absolute limits. Cell announced, their tentacles pulsing with serious red light. You will experience gravity variations from 0.3 to 2.0 standard units. The remaining 15 students stood before a massive spherical chamber filled with floating platforms. After the temperature trials, many had dropped out, claiming their equipment couldn't handle another extreme challenge. At least you'll need special equipment for this one, Trix said to Jack, adjusting her gravity compensation belt. Right. Jack scratched his head. Actually, this is pretty similar to our astronaut training, though the high gravity part reminds me more of my gym workouts. Gym? Workouts? A nearby rock-like alien rumbled. Yeah, where humans voluntarily expose their bodies to increased resistance for strength building, Jack explained. You know, lifting heavy weights, running with weighted vests, that kind of thing. The rock alien's surface cracked slightly, their species equivalent of a shocked expression. Inside the chamber, the challenge began with low gravity. Jack watched as other students activated their compensation devices, trying to stay stable. He simply used the techniques he'd learned during zero-G training, pushing off surfaces with controlled force. Human stone. Zell's voice came through the speakers. Your movement patterns suggest previous low-gravity experience. Sure, Jack replied, bouncing easily between platforms. Space training is pretty common on Earth. We even have special planes that create zero gravity for practice. We call them vomit comets because, well, you can guess why. The gravity increased gradually. At normal levels, nothing changed for Jack, but he noticed others starting to strain against the pull. When it hit 1.5 standard units, several suits started beeping warnings. This is approximately Earth's regular gravity, isn't it? Trix asked, her suit whirring with effort. Pretty close, Jack said, doing a few jumps to test the feeling. Though Earth's gravity isn't completely uniform, it varies a bit depending on where you are on the planet. The control room erupted in confused chatter. Your species evolved on a planet with inconsistent gravitational fields. One instructor asked incredulously. Just small differences, Jack shrugged, continuing through the course. Nothing you'd really notice unless you're doing precise scientific measurements. At 2.0 gravity units, most of the remaining students had to exit the chamber. Their suits simply couldn't compensate anymore. Jack felt the extra weight but kept moving, though more carefully now. This is actually pretty good resistance training, he commented, climbing up to a higher platform. Reminds me of wearing my weighted vest during mountain hikes. You intentionally carry extra weight while climbing mountains. Trix's voice was a mixture of horror and amazement. Sure, it's great exercise. Helps build endurance for when you need to carry real supplies on longer trips. Back in the observation room after completing the course, Jack found himself surrounded by instructors analyzing his performance data. According to these readings, one said, waving a scanner over him, your skeletal structure is significantly denser than most spacefaring species. And your muscle mass. Oh yeah, Jack nodded. That's just how humans are built. Has something to do with evolving on a higher gravity planet. Makes us pretty sturdy. Zell's tentacles had turned a new shade of blue they'd never seen before, and your species intentionally increases these natural advantages through voluntary exposure to additional resistance. Well, sure. How else would you stay in shape? Jack looked genuinely confused. Though I have to admit, this challenge was easier than I expected. My trainer back home would probably add some weights to make it more interesting. The scanner-wielding instructor dropped their device. I believe, Zell said slowly, we may need to recalibrate our understanding of extreme conditions. Perhaps what we consider survival challenges are merely mild inconveniences for your species. Jack thought about the winter survival training he'd done in Alaska. You might be onto something there. Though I've got to say, these challenges are still fun. Kind of like a relaxing vacation, actually. The room fell into stunned silence again, broken only by the sound of another instructor fainting. The final individual challenge took place in a massive biodome. Only 10 students remained, their numbers drastically reduced after the gravity trials. Inside the dome, a winding course stretched for what looked like miles, crossing various terrains. The endurance trial is simple, Zell explained, their tentacles glowing with intense purple light. Complete the course within one standard cycle. You must maintain constant forward motion. 3 rest periods are allowed, no longer than 10 minutes each. Trix checked her suit's energy reserves. How long is the course exactly? Approximately 20 units, Cell replied. In Earth measurements, about 40 kilometers. Jack brightened up. Oh nice, just like a fun run. The other students stared at him. Even Trix, who had grown somewhat used to Jack's surprising responses, looked shocked. Human stone, Cell said carefully. You understand this is a continuous course, through varying terrains, under different environmental conditions. Yeah, sounds like a typical trail marathon, though shorter. Jack started doing some light stretches. Back home, we have races that are 4 or 5 times this long. Some go through deserts, others up mountains. One of the instructors quickly pulled up data on their tablet. Your species runs, for recreation, in deserts. Sure, there's this famous one called the Marathon des Sables. 6 days across the Sahara Desert. Now that's a real challenge. Jack continued stretching. This looks more like a nice day hike. The course began, and students set off at various paces. Most activated their endurance enhancement systems or auxiliary power units. Jack just started jogging, carrying only his water bottle. Hour after hour passed. The course wound through artificial swamps, over rocky terrain, and across sandy stretches. One by one, students stopped for their rest periods, their suits requiring recharging or cooling down. Jack kept moving, occasionally switching between walking and jogging. He didn't take any rest periods. Human stone. Cell's voice came through the speakers. Our monitors show you've been moving for 6 hours straight. Your species can maintain this without rest. Oh yeah, Jack replied, not even sounding particularly tired. Humans are persistence hunters by nature. We evolved to keep going for hours. Something about efficient sweating and running on 2 legs. By hour 8, half the remaining students had dropped out, their suits' systems overwhelmed by the continued strain. Trix was still going, but her suit was making concerning noises. You should take a break, Jack suggested as he passed her again. Your cooling system sounds rough. How? Trix gasped. How are you still talking normally? Proper breath control, Jack explained. Want me to teach you some running techniques, though they might need adjusting for your suit. At hour 10, Jack crossed the finish line, the first to complete the course. He was sweaty but otherwise looked fine. He immediately started doing cool-down stretches. That was great, he said enthusiastically. The terrain variety really kept it interesting, though you might want to add some elevation changes next time. Make it more challenging. The instruction team huddled around their monitoring equipment, reviewing the data in disbelief. No enhancement systems, one muttered. No auxiliary power, no rest periods taken, and his vital signs remained stable throughout. More than stable, another added. Look at these readings. His body was actively adapting to each new environment. Temperature regulation, oxygen efficiency, muscle recovery, all happening automatically. Zell floated over to Jack, their tentacles a mix of amazement and confusion. Human stone, your performance today has exceeded our understanding of biological endurance capabilities. Really? Jack looked surprised. But this was just a normal workout. Wait until I tell you about ultra-endurance events back on Earth. There's this race called the Barkley Marathons that's really wild. As Jack enthusiastically described a race that seemed to defy several laws of biology, Trix finally made it to the finish line. Her suit was steaming, multiple warning lights flashing. Next time, she said, collapsing onto a recovery bed, I want to hear less about human endurance events. I think my nightmares are already booked solid. The graduation ceremony of the Galactic Academy of Survival Arts looked very different from its opening day. Only 7 students remained from the original 50, their achievement marked by the gleaming medals they wore. At the center of the group stood Jack Stone, still in his simple Earth clothes, looking slightly uncomfortable with all the attention. In the Academy's 1,000-year history, Grand Instructor Excel announced, their tentacles glowing with formal gold light, we have never seen performance quite like this. Human stone has not merely completed our challenges. He has forced us to reconsider what we consider extreme conditions. The gathered audience of alien diplomats and officials murmured among themselves. Jack caught sight of Ambassador Rix in the crowd, looking considerably less skeptical than during their first meeting. Furthermore, Cell continued, analysis of human stone's performance has led to a startling revelation. What we considered ultimate survival challenges are, in fact, normal environmental conditions on Earth. Our extreme pressure variations, common in Earth's oceans and mountains. Our temperature range, mild compared to Earth's natural climates. Our gravity challenges, less demanding than human recreational activities. Jack shifted awkwardly as hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at him. Beside him, Trix gave him a gentle nudge with her environmental suit. Therefore, Cell announced, the Academy Board has made two unprecedented decisions. First, we are creating a new division, the Deathworld Challenge Program. This will feature survival scenarios based on Earth conditions, designed to push our previous standards to new levels. The audience broke into excited chatter. Several military officials started taking rapid notes. Second, Zell's tentacles turned a formal shade of blue. We are officially designating Earth as a natural survival training ground. Any species wishing to test their adaptation capabilities can now apply for training programs on Earth, under human supervision. Jack raised his hand. About that. We already have those. They're called outdoor adventure programs. Anyone can sign up. The room fell silent again. An academy instructor fainted. You mean to tell us, Ambassador Rix spoke up, that your planet already runs survival training as a tourist activity? Well, yeah, Jack shrugged. We've got programs for all skill levels. Beginner stuff like camping and hiking, intermediate things like mountain climbing and scuba diving, then the more advanced activities like Arctic expeditions and desert crossings. Cell's tentacles turned white, a color Jack had never seen before. Your species commercialized survival training. Sure, it's pretty popular. Good way to disconnect from technology and get back to nature, you know. The Academy's board members huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Finally, Cell turned back to address the crowd. In light of this information, we are also adding Earth's recreational activities to our advanced curriculum. Human Stone has agreed to serve as a special advisor. Jack nodded. He'd already started designing some beginner-friendly programs. Nothing too intense, just some basic wilderness survival, maybe a little parkour. I have a question. Trix spoke up. If these challenges were so easy for humans, why did Earth send only one representative? Oh, that's simple, Jack replied. Nobody else wanted to take 3 months off from their regular outdoor activities. My friend Bill was planning a solo trek across Antarctica. Another was attempting a deep-sea diving record, and the rest of the candidates were busy with something called extreme ironing. Don't ask me to explain that one. As the ceremony concluded, Jack found himself surrounded by alien military officials and survival instructors, all eager to learn more about Earth's natural training environments. He tried his best to answer their questions, though explaining why humans would voluntarily go camping in winter was proving challenging. You know, Trix said, watching the excited crowd, when you first arrived without any special gear, we thought you were crazy. Now I'm thinking maybe the rest of the galaxy has been too comfortable. Jack grinned. That's the thing about humans. We don't just survive challenging conditions. We go looking for them. Now, who wants to hear about this thing we call spelunking? The sound of multiple aliens fainting filled the graduation hall.